Good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Redford, and this is the follow-up. Coming up on tonight's show, it's the second week of public hearings for the impeachment inquiry of President Trump. Has it done anything to change public opinion on the president's actions one way or the other? And if the impeachment effort fails, what will that mean at the ballot box in 2020? Central Michigan University's David Jesuit is here to break it all down for us. Plus, Pete Buttigieg has made a major move to the top of the polls in Iowa in the race for the Democratic nomination for president. How did he do that, and what does that mean? And that's not all. 1 year after Michigan voters said yes to the legalization of recreational marijuana, how much longer will it be before we see storefronts setting up shop to sell weed in your neighborhood? Wayne Kinne with the Michigan marijuana licensing experts has that answer for us. But first, we have viewer reaction from last week's show where we talked about the state of homelessness and where to get help with Dan Streeter from the Rescue Ministries of Mid-Michigan. Well, one of our viewers dialed into our follow-up hotline wondering where she and others can turn for help in her town.
I'd like to know more about help for needy people. There are homeless people in my town of Hale, and there is no help up here. The food donations are absolutely miserable, and there's nothing to help these people. And if you call NEMSCA, they tell you they can't help you. So I really want to know where the help for the people are, especially the young people. They are walking around homeless from here to Grand Rapids and back. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for that call. I followed up with Dan Streeter at the Rescue Ministries of Mid-Michigan. He said there are 3 places up north to find shelter and resources you may need, and here they are on your screen. We have the New Dawn Shelter of Gladwin County. You can see the website there, newdawnshelter.org. Lydia's Gate, that's in Mayo. You can see that website. We also have the Sunrise Mission, and that is in Alpena. So that's some good information for you. Any more questions, you can call the Rescue Ministries of Mid-Michigan. There it is on your screen, r3monline.org. And we'd like to hear from more of you to help drive the conversation here on the follow-up each and every week. You can do that in a variety of ways via social media on Facebook and Twitter. You can email us, and you can also dial into our follow-up hotline, as that viewer just did. And if you'd like to see any of our past shows, just log on to deltabroadcasting.org. Up first, as promised, David Jesuit. He is the chairperson and professor of political science and public administration. Been on the show before from Central Michigan University. Thanks for coming in again. Always
sure.
Great to have you in.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Okay, so the Democrats have been rolling one person after another in these public hearings on the impeachment of the president. And the story, for the most part, by and large, has been the same story, that President Trump made this phone call, quid pro quo, right, that he held up some military aid in exchange for investigating a political rival. I think that one's sort of not debatable. That's been out there. I think the Republicans throw that little smoke screen a little bit. No telling how it's going to play out, but the longer this goes, what is sort of the impact? I mean, if it ultimately fails, the Democrats take a hit, or is there enough information out there on what he probably did that's going to hurt the Republican base, right?
Well, it is repetitive, and we've heard this story now for months. I think, overall, the Democrats are building a case toward impeachment that I find it difficult to believe will fail. And I think most observers now expect that the president will be impeached by the House, and then there will be a trial in the Senate, and he'll be acquitted in the Senate. And so, I don't see anything that makes me believe that narrative will change. I think that unless there is some surprise, we were talking before the show, and in today's testimony, it came up, conversations with Giuliani. And there are some things like that, for example, if Giuliani testifies and there's some bombshell from a testimony like that, okay, maybe things change. Or if a former Ambassador Bolton, if he were to testify, and if he has a bombshell, those are some ifs. But short of that, I don't expect things to change, and he'll be impeached and then acquitted. Now, timing-wise, I do think it matters, because I think, Democrats clearly support this, and I took some time looking at some polls, and it's not a surprise. It really breaks down by partisan
Sure it does.
lines. I mean, clearly. And so if we just, consider that if this is wrapped up, let's say by Christmas in the House, and they do things relatively quickly, and then they can go to the Senate, at least the Democrats kick it over to the Senate, and then it becomes the Republicans' problem, the Senate's problem.
Exactly.
If they move too slowly or move too quickly,
Right.
that's not really their problem anymore.
Good point.
So Democrats need to kind of focus on how much time is too much time, how much time is enough time.
Right.
I do agree. I mean, if it were to drag on too long, or let's say that after this buildup, somehow the Democratic majority in the House actually fails to adopt articles of impeachment, I think then, that's not going to work well for the Democrats, because they've spent all this time and energy and then nothing.
Yeah,
right?
you got to be careful how long you want to carry this on. Speaking of polls, and
Yes.
to this point it's been fairly partisan. So we've got a couple of polls here which talks about sort of the public hearings and how much people are really watching. It's so much out there. So if you look at it here on the screen, how closely are you following the impeachment hearings? Very closely or somewhat closely. Clearly that's 58% that the bulk of the country is certainly paying attention to it. Now you go to the next poll that we can show on the screen. Which statement comes closest to your point of view? Trump's actions were wrong and he should be impeached and removed from office, or be impeached and not removed. And that's close to 60% of the folks that clearly look at this saying what he did was certainly inappropriate, right? This was not based on any kind of a partisan line. That certainly shows what people are watching, how much they're watching, and they don't sort of agree with what he probably did, right? Let's go to the next graphic there. 70% of Americans think President Trump's request to a foreign leader to investigate his political rival, which sits at the heart of the House and Representatives inquiry, was wrong. So that kind of gives that validation. So while this is sort of on kind of partisan, what does that tell you? That the world of public opinion certainly is not in his favor, right? I mean,
Right. I've been following the polls somewhat closely, and it's interesting. Look, my job is to follow politics. That's one of the things that I try to do when I teach. I try to be very well informed, and it's pretty difficult given our busy schedules. That's one of the things I do in my job,
Right.
and I find it difficult to find enough time to follow this closely. So most ordinary Americans, they have so many other things that they're doing. It's difficult to follow something like this very closely. I'm surprised and somewhat surprised at the numbers, the percentages, fairly large percentages who are following it closely. The 70% number, that does jump out, and I compare this to the Clinton impeachment, and there was never a majority of Americans that supported the Clinton impeachment, and we're looking at about 40%. And there was a partisan break there as well. So I went back and I looked, and it was 38% in August of 1998 of Republicans. Only 38% of Republicans
That's
supported.
surprising to hear that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Supported impeaching Clinton. Now, by the time they voted on the articles of impeachment, that had changed, and Republicans, 2/3 of Republicans, but only 2/3. Right, now we're looking at over 80% of Democrats support impeaching President Trump. Only 2/3 of Republicans finally came around and said, let's support, we support impeachment. And maybe about 40% of the American people supported Clinton's impeachment. So there's quite a big difference in public support. It's much larger, the level of public support for impeachment of Trump than it was for Clinton.
Yeah, with social media and everything else, things have changed dramatically since then.
That's a good point.
I want to change gears a little bit, talk about the 2020 presidential race on the Democratic side. Pete Buttigieg getting some traction. At least one of the polls has him leading in Iowa. Let's take a look at that. There you go. He had 25% of the polling there. The Iowa caucuses aren't till February, but that's kind of a telling story. He sort of leapfrogged the traditionalists, the Biden, Sanders, and Warren. He's kind of moderate, I would say, and he's certainly the first openly gay candidate. It looks like he has some staying power, at least early on. What do you make of him? Is he viable? And it certainly tells me a little bit that sort of the established traditional candidates maybe are kind of wearing out their welcome.
Yeah, I think this and the others like Bloomberg and Deval Patrick getting in suggest that there's some dissatisfaction with Biden and the other moderate candidates. And so one of the things that I have read is that Buttigieg has invested a lot of money on the ground. He's raised a lot of money. I mean, he's a surprise to me. I didn't think he'd go as far as he has, but he's been very successful at raising money, and now he's spending that money. And we see the outcome in Iowa. The ground game matters in Iowa, and his organization is apparently quite impressive. So I wouldn't get too carried away, though. We've seen, 3 different, I believe, candidates finish in the top at the top of at least one of the Des Moines Register polls. And if I look at the polls, I see different polls here in front of me. Buttigieg, Warren, Biden, Sanders. And it's the same 4 that we're seeing there.
Sure.
So yeah, this matters. I mean, this is important news. It's something that needs to be considered very seriously.
Right.
But whether or not he's there finishing at the top on February 3rd, no. And again, I went back to 2004, and 2004, you're thinking, who was the candidate? And who eventually won Iowa? And it was John Kerry. And nobody thought Kerry would.
He was not the front runner then.
No, he wasn't. And, Dick Gephardt was leading, and then Howard Dean comes on big, and so I'm wondering if there's some room for one of those other candidates, Amy Klobuchar, Kamala Harris. They're not polling so well now, but given dissatisfaction, if Biden does falter, they're in that lane, the moderate lane. They would stand to gain the most, perhaps, if Biden does falter at some point. And that's what they're betting on. Biden hasn't been a great candidate, and
absolutely,
if he stumbles, they're there.
Yeah, and there's some debates this week in addition to the public hearings, so we got a lot going on. Hey, thanks for coming.
Sure.
Always a pleasure, and love your perspective on this. We'll have you on again.
Thanks.
Up next, it's been a year since Michigan voters approved the legalization of recreational marijuana at the ballot box. We haven't seen storefront sales just yet. That's about to change, but first we'd like to hear from you to help drive the conversation here on the show. Here's how you can do that. Join our conversation by visiting our website at deltabroadcasting.org/thefollowup, or hit me up on social media via Facebook and Twitter. Go to facebook.com/QTVFollowup and on Twitter at QTVFollowup. And that's not all. Drop us an email at thefollowup@delta.edu, or you can record a comment or question on our follow-up hotline for next week's show. That's 1-877-430-8989. So join the conversation at The Follow-Up. We really want to hear from you. Welcome back. The sales of marijuana for recreational use is about to ramp up 1 year after we approved it at the ballot box. So what's been going on behind the scenes, and what can we expect next? Wayne Kinne is with the MML experts, the Michigan Marijuana Licensing experts. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me again.
Had you again a year ago, and it's good to have you back again because you're working on the front lines of this stuff. So a couple things happened today. What we've been hearing this week is that the sales of recreational marijuana could begin maybe as soon as December 1st. Today, the state issued the first of many licenses, the first 5. You were expecting that, and the kind of the businesses that got the licensing really didn't surprise you, right? I mean.
No, I think we expected that. I may have expected more, but that may happen in the next couple weeks as well. I'm assuming that these facilities were amped up, ready to go, ready to turn their applications in on November 1st, the first day that the state started to accept them. And a decision was made within the 60 days that their state is required to make a decision.
Okay. The other thing that happened this week, the result of the state's marijuana regulatory agency telling the some owners of current medical marijuana businesses they need to transfer, they can, as much as 50% of their product to jumpstart the recreational sort of marijuana use field. But that isn't one size fits all, right? Can you kind of explain how that's working? Because there's not a whole lot of product out there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's actually a shortage in the medical marijuana system as well. So what they're really doing is so far there's only these 5 licenses that have been handed out. two of which don't actually house marijuana or an inventory of marijuana. So the three that are licensed, there's a grow, a processor, and a retailer. The retailer would be where general public would be able to purchase marijuana. What they're allowing those facilities that are licensed in both the recreational and the medical market
Sure.
To do is transfer 50% of their current inventory that's been in their inventory for 30 days in the retail setting, so they can transfer that medical marijuana into recreational marijuana. That way there's an avenue to get product.
So where are we on the product side? Because there's going to be a little bit of a slower rollout. The supply of medical marijuana has been kind of low, sort of not keeping up with demand. At the same time, now we're going to try to ramp up recreational. So what's sort of happening in the industry to kind of sort of pick up the pace and sort of meet with that demand, which is going to be huge, right?
Okay, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The demand is far outweighing the supply. The supply chain is attempting to keep up, but it just cannot. What the state did with the medical side is they allowed caregivers to funnel marijuana into the regulated market through there's certain avenues that they have to take in order to make that legal. But it's sort of filling that void in the marijuana market. They're allowing that marijuana that's coming through those channels into the recreational market this way, because obviously, being licensed today, nobody was able to grow recreational marijuana yet with a license. So we have to have an avenue to get marijuana on the shelves to the general public.
So I want to go in two directions here. One has to do with who are the first to get licensed. It's those that already have a medical marijuana license that have already sort of been out there doing this for a lot of years, right? And so they have sort of the leverage, and in time, folks that aren't in the business, that like to get into the recreational market, do they stand much of a chance, or is it going to take some time for those folks to get into it because the processing, the amount of money that's involved, it's sort of a daunting task to get into it if you haven't been into it, right?
Yeah, it's quite a daunting task, and the state is requiring for 2 years that in order to get a license in a grower, a retailer, or a processor, you're going to need to have an equivalent license in the medical field for 2 years. There are certain avenues that you can get in as the small guy, if you will. They have a micro business and a micro grower, and the only requirement for that really is that you're a Michigan resident, so you don't need a medical license, and in fact you cannot hold any other license with those, and those are basically a self-sustaining, totally vertically integrated license.
And really what we're talking about is at the heart of your business, at MML Experts, right? And let's put their website contact information on why Wayne and I talk about that. If people want more information about who you represent, and there's Michigan Marijuana Licensing Experts.com. So talk to me a little bit about the work that you do. I assume you're consulting with different people, organizations, villages, townships. Talk to me about how you're walking them through that. And my guess is your phone is ringing off the hook a little bit more now that we're getting to this point.
Yeah, what my end of the company is that I'm the guy that gets you the license. If you've found yourself a location that you'd like to be in, or maybe you haven't found a location, but you're pretty confident that you want to be in this, you may have some questions, and I can answer those questions for you. Once you've made the decision that, yes, this is something I'm going to do, I'll get you through the process. First, I'll get you and your entity through the process, make sure that you meet all of the qualifications, you don't have anything that disqualifies you from holding a state license. And then we go through the process of licensing your facility. So a lot of people will like to get approved as an individual or as an entity or both, and then start the process of building a facility, because that's where all of the money comes in.
Right. So the process at this point, we talked about this earlier, it's been just about a year now that we approved this at the ballot box. I think we anticipated it might take some time to get this ramped up. Now we're a year, we're just kind of doing it. Are we sort of right on track with that, or do you expect it to start sooner? You think the process is going slower?
I think it's a little slow. I guess I don't know that I expected it to really go a lot faster.
Yeah.
The issues seem to be the supply chain, whether that be growers that are struggling to produce product that will reach the shelves after testing. Those kind of things seem to be what's really holding it up. So we're still supplementing product
Right.
for the regulated market, and I was anticipating that would have probably found its way out by now, but now with the recreational adult use market, obviously that the demand is just going to increase.
Absolutely. Well, among the supply and demand issue, another challenge I'm told is right now, so there's kind of a backlog, or there will be a backlog, getting the product tested at what is now, I think, just 6 testing sites in the state. I don't know if that's the right number or not. So the longer that takes, the opportunity for sort of the black market weed still may be out there. So that's a concern, I guess. Maybe you can expand on that. Can people kind of trust the product? Or are we relying more on the black market because we can't get sort of the better stuff tested and regulated and ready to go?
Sure. So when I talk about caregivers getting product through the regulated market, all of that needs to be tested. They're not allowing caregivers to provide anything that can't pass the same tests that you would if you were a regulated licensed company. And in fact, you have to sell that to a regulated company, and then they have to go through the process of getting that passed through the test. And there's definitely a bottleneck there. The testing seems to be taking near a month to get your results back. As far as the black market,
Off the street, whatever you want to call it, right?
The black market, I wouldn't trust it. You know, there's absolutely no regulation to the black market, so we don't know how people are growing. We don't know the products they're putting on there. We don't know if it's safe, at least with the regulated market that I work within. We know what's in the product. You know, it's tested. They test it for heavy metals, for pesticides, for molds, those kind of things. So we know what's in them. We know that they're safe and they're not harmful.
Right, and that's for more so I guess the big grow operations. That doesn't necessarily regulate. If I can grow a certain amount in my house,
Sure.
I can.
Sure,
But
absolutely.
that's not being tested at all, right?
Absolutely
Right.
not. So as we know, you can grow 12 personal plants for your household, per household. We know that that's not going to be tested, and technically that's not supposed to be sold. We know how the black market works, and that's
Sure.
and that's unfortunate. But those, we don't know what we're getting with the black market and those home growers.
Right, and the more we get into it, the more of this stuff is tested. Once it gets ramped up, we should be in better shape there.
Absolutely.
The other issue, I guess, still a smaller number of communities that are actually allowing the sales of the recreational weed. I think there were 1,400 communities that sort of said no across the state to this, out of the 1,700 plus. So is that a sense that you still have a little bit more work to do to convince people that this is a good thing, we got to move in this direction, despite the fact the state voted it, 54 to 42%? They voted overwhelmingly.
Sure. So the last numbers I've heard were around 80% of the municipalities in the state have opted out of recreational marijuana, despite the fact that the majority voted this in. In cities like Detroit that overwhelmingly voted for recreational marijuana have now banned recreational marijuana. I think it's really just a fear of the unknown. The medical marijuana market is still a bit of a struggle, and cities don't really know how to take that quite yet. I think with time and education, and once everybody starts to get comfortable with the regulated adult use market, they'll start to see that this isn't so bad. This isn't something that we have to fear, and in fact, this is a good opportunity for townships and cities and municipalities to provide both work and a desired recreation for the majority of.
I think the consumers in time will start demanding it. They're going to go to the municipalities and say, I know we voted it down a year ago, but now we are a year and a half into it. Seems to be working well. They'll probably change their tune. Do you still see it as somewhat of a cash cow for some of these municipalities? For instance, the fact that I picked up today, medical marijuana sales exceeded 229 I think it was billion or million last year. No, million, 229 million in the past year. Those numbers are expected to jump to nearly $1 billion in time per year. So that's significant. Yeah.
I think so. I think whenever you bring a new
Yeah.
product on the market, and it's a product that we've all known for years now, I think you'll see that amp up like that. I think that some people are starting to think that this is the golden ticket or the
Yeah.
get rich quick scheme, and that's just not the case. This is definitely hard work. This is an industry that
Right.
requires hard work and some ingenuity. And there are companies that are just not making it and not
Right.
surviving the storm. So it's not something that you jump into haphazardly. This is definitely something
Yeah.
that you plan out and run like any business.
In the minute or so we have left, what other message would you like to share with the viewers to maybe clarify some myths in regards to sort of what we're going through now, what we're going to see next? Is there something out there that...
I think the biggest question everybody really has is, when will I be able to walk into a store and purchase marijuana? I think the answer to that is December 1st. However, it's very limited. So far, there's only one store in the entire state in Ann Arbor that you can do that, or you will be able to do that. December 1st is sneaking up on us quite quickly. There's only a week or two before December 1st. We may see some other facilities licensed, but we're not going to see a number of facilities licensed. So this is going to take time. This is going to take a few months before you'll actually see it in your own neighborhoods.
Right. And I think the regulatory body that's been sort of managing this and regulating that, I think they sense that maybe it's been slowing the uptick. I think probably issuing those licenses today is another, I didn't expect that a couple days ago. I get a sense they're going to ramp that up. There's sort of a hunger for it. I think the public is saying, hey, we need to start rolling this thing out. We got to figure it out.
Absolutely, and they've already kind of vetted these companies because they
Sure.
do have medical licenses.
Yeah.
So.
And it's good that they're being cautious. They want to do it the right way. So,
Absolutely.
Wayne, thanks again.
Thank you.
Good luck. We'll have you on again once this gets rolling and see where it goes from there. So keep up the good work. And that's our show for tonight. But be sure to join us again next Tuesday night at 8 p.m. for the follow-up. In the meantime, hit me up on social media or call into our follow-up hotline so you can be part of the conversation here on the show. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. Have a great night.